Hello and welcome to this NJMon N1 user meeting number 5. Last week I was at the IBM Power Technical University. I was speaking 2 sessions there. I talked on getting the best out of your Power 9 servers, and I had 945 people turned up for that virtual session. I then ran another one on NJMon and I got 430 people attend that. Then I ran some labs, and I'll get back to that in a couple of slides' time. So I've actually run out of time to run a live user meeting this week. So I thought, well, there's not much to say. And then I thought, well, actually, there's a whole bunch of things that have happened. So I thought I'd just record the video as 95% of the NJMon user meeting people actually watch the replays rather than the live event. I thought I could get away with that. I hope you'll let me do that. Right there, this is the normal chart in here. I'm not going to go in any detail. I don't think anything's really changed in here. So that's a good summary chart. If you want me to talk through that, look at some of the older user meetings. Right, one of the things that we've changed is there's a new video out in October. Part of the Technical University conference generated that. I'm amazed that we now hit, this is in October, 2 weeks ago, 16,000 views of the videos for NJMon and the other tools around it. That's 3 hours of education right there. But we've added another one to it. And what is that? Well, at the Technical University, I ran a hands-on lab session where I have Grafana running on the web, and so people can remotely log in. And the idea is you work through the lab notes to generate, you can see on the left there, the 5 graphs that we get you to create. Then there's 3 more advanced topics at the end. They're sort of optional to get done in about an hour or so. Now this is an actually open-ended lab, so you can have 3 or 4 hours to get through even the advanced topics if you want to. I actually created the video in about 40 minutes, but then I know what I'm doing. I know which button I want to press next. I don't have to hunt around for those sorts of things. But I created a video of it just in case something went horribly wrong at the Technical University, and to let other people see what we're actually up to. And that's up on YouTube now. 240 views in the first week, so that's getting popular. But wait for it, there's some more interesting stuff on the next slide. The idea, I've got an experimental session in here. So on Friday the 13th of November, and what could possibly go wrong on that day? At 2 p.m. UK time, then I'm going to host a web session just to get people started and talk about these things, and then give you out the lab guide, the website, and a username and password so you can log into my copy of Grafana, or one of them, that's actually out on the internet. You can create these first few graphs. I got some 3 or 4 AIX images saving data to this copy. And so you can then go and graph some of your data. We've got 1 or 2 Linux machines saving data as too. That includes the actual Linux server, which is running InfluxDB and Grafana, so you can actually sort of self-monitor. Now, this is just experimental. If you email me in the next week and a half, then I will get you connected up. If we have too many people, then we'll try and overflow to the next month. You'll notice in here that this is being sort of supported by SkyTap, who are giving us access to these servers on the internet for us. So they're the good guys. I wanted to sort of give them a little advert there for their good help with our projects. Next up then, I have released a new version 69 of the AIX and Linux NJMon and NIMon. It's not a large release. I sort of made a little mistake, if you like, in the last release, where I got the 2 tools to output the PID of the process, the child process that it's creating, and then you can use that to perhaps monitor it or kill it later on if you want to start a new one. That upset some people because they're piping the output from NJMon into other tools, and now there's this 4 to 6 digit number gets thrown out down the pipe. So we now have a new -n option, no PID option on startup, so that gets them around that. And I've forgotten people were doing this. If they go to the InfluxDB server, you can run SSH user and a host name, and then the NJMon command, and then pipe that straight into a tool that puts it into the Influx database, like the NJMon to Influx Turbo, as an example. This is particularly nice because if you like, the starting and stopping of your NJMONs are controlled centrally on the Influx database, and the data, because we're using the SSH, is all encrypted end to end. And that's another project to try and get that done natively, but that's one way of doing it if you have your network thought police insisting on everything's encrypted on the network, even if the data is not personally sensitive. Another one is that I wrote the AIX manual pages for NJMON and NIMON. When I did this, I reordered them in alphabetical order and realised I had a bunch missing of the options. So I reworked that very hard late in the last a couple of nights, and I get that out the door. The Linux manual pages are in much better condition, but maybe I'll do the same, reorder them in alphabetical order, and that allows me to check that all the options are actually covered there. And I'm trying to build up the notes, if you like, at the end of the manual page with examples of how you can run these tools, and for example that SSH version up at the top there is one of them. Now, having created those manual pages, they're installed automatically when you run the ninstall package. If you take the njmon.zip and unzip it, then you could just type in, as the root user, ninstall, and it will find which version of njmon and nimon needs to be installed on this particular machine, put them into user lbin or user local bin, depending if it's AIX or Linux, and it installs the manual pages, because I want to try and get the manual pages out of the actual commands. I mean, the basics can be in there, but we don't want long dissertations about different options and ways of doing things. We'll put those into the manual pages, and you'll have those on your computer then. But I have actually then cut and paste those output of those commands and put them on the web. So if you want to see the latest options and commands, they're there. I've got links. Those are hot links if you take the PDF version of the handout. Feedback, and I'm sure there's lots of typos, and they're also a little bit famous for silly spelling mistakes and things. So if you can give me some feedback, that'd be good. We can polish those up and get them into better shape. Right, next off, we've had this NJMON D. If you're using NJMON and generating JSON data, you can then send that off to the central daemon that collects it and injects it into InfluxDB. You can also save JSON files if that's what you want, although I don't like clogging up my system with lots of JSON files. There was a little problem with it. If you stopped it to do an update, for example, of InfluxDB, or you just restarted it, the NJMON would try and talk to InfluxDB and then spot the fact that it's not there anymore. You can't write the data into it. It then tried to output a line of debug saying, oh, yeah, there's something wrong with your InfluxDB, and there was a typo in there, and it crashed the thread. Now, we're multi-threaded, so if you're running 10 threads, that's okay, you only crash one, but if it's down for more than a minute or two, you may end up crashing all the threads. So then you used to get into this problem where it was reporting that the queue was getting longer and longer, but there's no active threads trying to work on the queue. Bit embarrassing. So I got a friend of mine who spotted the bug, and we fixed that so it doesn't fail anymore. Then he said it would be nice if it just sat there trying to retry, perhaps every 15 seconds. If InfluxDB is down for a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes, then it'll just, once that's back up, it will write out the one that's failing to write, and then take things off the queue, and it will work through the queue and push them all into InfluxDB. And we've tested that we've allowed the queue to get up to a couple of thousand, and it still pushes the data out into InfluxDB. So that's a nice one. It doesn't crash. Two, it'll actually keep trying and save your data rather than throwing it away, which was the initial approach. So that's good. That's worth having if you're using the NJMON tool. That's in the NJMON tools file, version 55. I think the previous one was 50. Okay, now we've had this chart for a little while, and we can see on here that this is the NJMON D at the top. We can get it to save to JSON files, and we can also then use for Splunk and Elastic, we can either use the Python client for Splunk to load the data into Splunk, or for Elastic they have this thing called Beats. It has various names, but it can monitor a JSON file, and when we add things to the end of the file, it can work out what that is and send that to Elastic. But I noticed down in here, when we got Prometheus working, somebody else told me how to do this. It was very, very easy when I gave it a try. We put in a -w flag to improve something, but it's very easy easy to configure this Telegraph tool, which actually comes from Influx Data, the guys that do Influx DB. They have the input plugins and an output plugin. So we have an input plugin so that Telegraph pretends to be Influx DB. And then when Prometheus comes and asks Telegraph to get the data, the output Prometheus plugin sends the data off to Prometheus. But then I sort of had one of those little brain moments and I think, whoa, actually, there's something going on here. What else we do? Well, Telegraph actually has output plugins for Splunk and Elastic. So rather than having to write your own Python client to take our JSON and put it in, or use Beats, which is a little bit clunky, you have to save the JSON files and then get them to monitor it, and then you probably have to delete the old JSON files and stuff like that. We could do it all live if you use Telegraph with an output plugin for Splunk and Elastic. I am not an expert on Splunk and Elastic. I know a little bit about InfluxDB and a tiny bit about Prometheus. And enough to get it up and running and making sure the data is arriving. NExtract, I've covered this in other presentations, other user meetings. So this is nothing really to do with NJMon, but if you've got an Influx database and Grafana, then we can use NExtract. It's Python programs that can log on to, this is for power users only, power computers only. It logs onto the HMC, which logs onto the VIO servers and can pull some data back. The nice thing about this is it's based on sort of server level stats, and it can do the logical partitions, as the IBM name for virtual machines. But that does include IBM I, and normally NJMon doesn't work on IBM I. I just don't have the brain power or the bandwidth to actually go off and fix that one, and I don't have any friends that do programming on IBM I. But anyway, in that package, somebody reported that two of the stats weren't quite right. We were reporting the maximum virtual processor number rather than the current virtual processor number, for example. We've improved some of the warnings. We get these error messages coming out from the HMC and the virtual I/O server sometimes. These are actually genuine errors of things that should be fixed on the HMC. So we've escalated those rather than put them into error log files. They're actually being put out on the screen now, and you should be able to raise a PMR to get those fixed. I have a couple of those outstanding at the moment. We'll see what the HMC developers come back with. In another update, I've had requests for NExtract to report everything we can get off the HMC. I didn't realize, I thought we were collecting everything, but I'd forgotten that I limited it to the standard, the CPU, memory, and disks and network, and we were totaling up the disks and network to keep things simple. But we can actually get individual networks and individual disk stats as well. So people have asked for that, and at some point I'll have a spare weekend to go and sort that out. We have all the details and the procedures on how to get the data. I just have to add them, boosting the extra numbers out. And I think I'll change them to be the actual names as provided by the HMC. Right, so here's my to-do list. Help needed, Splunk and Elastic, if people can try the NIMON, Telegraph and going into Splunk and Elastic. The Linux manual page is in there. This was the same last month, but running InfluxDB and Grafana on AIX, because that's the best operating system in the world. I also want to make a quick video on rapidly installing InfluxDB, Grafana, NJMon, and pulling down a dashboard and looking at a graph. Shouldn't take more than 10 minutes. I still get friends saying, "Wow, I wish I could try that, but it's going to just take too long." You think, 10 minutes, guys? It's really simple. In fact, I'd let them have a look at mine if they wanted. Yeah, SSL support for pumping our data encrypted, and as I said, NExtract will try and grab all the stats. Right, here's I've polished up my end chart in here with lots of links on it. You probably don't want to type all those in, so pull down the PDF and click on those, and they should all work. Right, that's it for this time. Thank you very much. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up.